Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Virendra Daphne from Standard Chartered, and we are partnering with CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. This is I'm doing in my personal capacity. Today, I have a pleasure talking with Rohit Dhawan, the person who is a regional lead for the APAC region from the Amazon AWS side. He also has a rich academic credentials, having a PhD in machine learning against his name. Welcome, Rohit.
Thanks, Virendra, and pleasure to be talking to you and the CDO Magazine.
How do you think one should accelerate the digital transformation?
Yes, that's a good point. Because often, transformation takes a very long time. I think the number one way you can accelerate transformation is get the right people on board. I mean, that's absolutely key, right? You need to have the right leaders in the team. Whether these are, if this is your head of digital transformation, it's your chief data officer, it's your chief transformation officer. All of these roles and personas, are people who have been there, who've done that before, and these are people, who know what transformation and what good transformation looks like, and these are people who will empower, other people to deliver for them, or they will guide the roadmap for that transformation. You would have probably expected me to say something like, hey, let's get some technology accelerators into the mix, or let's use some digital technologies to accelerate transformation. But I actually think it's the right people coming on board which will accelerate transformation. Once you have the right people on board, these people will remove blockers, right? They will have a strong bias for action. These people will have a progressive mindset, right? And they will make decisions very quickly. So I think having the right team on board is absolutely key. But I think there's a couple of other factors also that you can use to accelerate transformation. One is, having the right operating model. Like, how do people work together? How do teams deliver, right? So what we have seen of late is that formation of a multidisciplinary cross-functional team is far more effective in delivering a transformation versus a team that is split by function. So you need the business people, the data person, the customer experience person, the technology person, to all work together and have a common shared vision of the product that you are developing to meet the needs of a stakeholder or a persona, versus the business team specifying the requirements, the data team analyzing the data, then handing it over to the technology team to build a solution, and then technology team coming back to the business team to present the solution and create buy-in, and then the business team taking this solution to the customer. And that's how things happened in the past, right? But now we have the technology to support the agile transformation. And so I think that's factor number two. And factor number three, in my opinion, to accelerate transformation is having the right program structure to drive the transformation. Create excitement about the transformation. Create motivation, right? Send newsletters, recognize people. Celebrate wins, right? Announce to the world that we are embarking on a 3-year transformation. We've got these big, audacious goals that we want to achieve, and these milestones that we want to hit. I think just that excitement, that optimism can transform not just people, but also organizations.
I think this was, again, one of the excellent answers. This is becoming a masterclass for anybody who want to think about data strategy. So you've covered 3 points very brilliantly: the process and skills. Then you said the coherent or the shared vision. And then even the third point. If I go further and say, see, CXO level people always have some of the dilemma, or even strategy makers, that I have internal process to transform and I have a customer product. So shall I transform the customer journey first, or shall I go for internal processes? Where should I spend? What should be my decision for digital transformation?
So, yes, that's a common problem, right? Where organizations are thinking about the customer journey, and they also want to, optimize their internal processes. At the end of the day, you got to do both, right? Because the internal process has to cater to the need of the customer eventually, directly or indirectly. I'll give you a simple example, right? Let's say your customer applies for a loan, right? And the loan processing officer puts in a request for the loan approval. Now, you may have an internal loan approval process that currently takes about 2 weeks because of the IT system or because of the handover or approval process that it needs to undergo. And what you want to do is ideally reduce that time period from 2 weeks to, let's say, 2 days, right? So what you want to do is optimize an internal process by way of optimizing your technology system or improving your process, or by using other hacks or techniques or mechanisms which do not compromise on the quality of the process, but at the same time expedite the process. But at the end of the day, what you're trying to solve is the need of the customer. So we always start backwards from the needs of the customer and then think about what internal processes need to be optimized. So eventually, you've got to do both, but it's got to fit with the roadmap that you've defined to meet the needs of the customer.
I think this was covered very well. You're saying trying to get a win-win situation where go back from the customer and then even do an internal process optimization based on the need and the requirement. Now, if I go to conclude, because a lot of these are seen by CXO level people as well as the youngsters, as well as the mid strategy makers. Okay. If you have to advise to youngsters or the strategy makers about digital transformation strategy or some guiding 3 points to them, what they could be?
Sure. So, digital transformation strategy, right, means different things to different people. And I'll tell you what it means to me. For me, a digital transformation strategy is a plan. It's a plan of action, right? I think that's what the strategy should lead to, because you can strategize as much as you like, but unless you execute, you're not going to get any results, right? And instead of spending too much time strategizing, what it makes sense to do is come up with a strategy, start executing, and then revisit the strategy. I think that's really important. So point number one, the strategy that you come up with or the plan of action that you come up with is not a constant. It needs to be revisited every few weeks or every 6 months. And it needs to be adjusted based on the results you're achieving and the learnings that you have in terms of the execution. So that's point number one. Point number two is most digital strategies, do not come to life, and that's the reality. They don't come to life because they are too theoretical. Now, to go from theory to practice, I mean, they say, there's not, in theory, there's no difference between theory to practice, theory or practice, but in practice there is. So when you start practicing, right, if you're a practitioner, you will know that there are a number of considerations or factors that you may not have considered when you were devising the strategy, because you don't know what you don't know, right? You may have identified risks, but there are a number of unknown unknowns, right? Things that you never even thought about, even as a risk or an issue. Now, to understand, what those blockers are or what those unknowns are, you got to start executing, and you got to start experimenting, and you got to start failing at times, right? And I think it's okay to fail when executing a transformation strategy, because real transformation happens when you learn from what works and what doesn't work, and you keep adjusting, right? And that adjustment should lead to the adjustment of the strategy. So I think that's point number two, right? Start quickly, start executing, and learn and incorporate your learnings back into the strategy. Point number three on creating a digital strategy, right, is making sure that the digital strategy has been created in consultation with all the relevant parties. And this might sound obvious, but it's not always the case, because often what we see is that management will create a strategy, right, and that strategy is expected to be executed by someone who was not part of the strategy development process, right? So essentially, you are handing over the strategy to be executed by someone who was not part of the conversation and who has not bought into that strategy, which is a huge risk for failure. Similarly, right, you may have a specific department spearheading a digital strategy, but you haven't consulted all the different stakeholders who will be impacted by the strategy. And same issue, right? Because you have not consulted all the different stakeholders, or they have not been part of that strategy development process, you will not achieve success, because most digital transformation strategies touch upon different departments of any large enterprise. So there's got to be that shared vision, and everyone needs to be heard in the strategy development process.
I think, Rohit, that was quite a brilliant answer. The thing is, there are three things that you said which needed to be probably understood by every strategy maker. And the first thing you said, hey, no strategy can be permanent. It has to be get changed. We saw Amazon was a bookstore and later on become the platform in its way by modifying strategy and all that. And then second point was like, when you said the strategy makers or everyone should be heard, or even this fail fast, So if you fail fast, you learn fast. So thank you very much, Rohit Dhawan, for joining me today. And for everybody, please keep visiting CDO Magazine Tech for CDO interview series. Thank you very much. I close it here.
Thanks, Ranjan.